I have not paid Mr. Sutton anything.
So just like all the other ones of you, Johnny Sutton's been working on your behalf, spending his days here with all you guys for free?
I don't know.
You don't even know what you owe him, do you?
No, I don't know what I owe Mr. Sutton.
What's his hourly rate? Do you even know that?
No, we have never entered into a fee agreement.
So what? So just so we're clear, you don't know what you owe him, you don't know what the agreement is, and you don't even know what his hourly rate is. Is that right?
I'm not sure I owe him anything, but I don't know.
You say under oath you don't owe him anything?
I don't know that I do, no.
Johnny Sutton, who's standing there to my left, according to you under oath, could very well possibly be working for free.
He could be working pro bono correctly.
Okay, you don't know.
I have not asked him. Mr. Sutton did a significant amount of work for us rather immediately. I knew Mr. Sutton and I called him at the last minute before we went to the FBI.
The question was, you don't know, do you?
Whether,
you don't know what you owe him or what his rate is. That was a question. You don't
Yes,
know.
that's correct. I don't.
Okay. What you do know is that Jeff Mateer attempted to have the Attorney General's office set aside $50,000 for that man right there, Johnny Sutton. Isn't that right?
I don't know that Mr. Mateer attempted to do that.
You didn't know about that?
I knew that there was a discussion about it, but I don't know that Mr. Mateer attempted to do that, no.
He sent an email to the controller. He sent an email to Lacey Mays. You didn't know any of that?
I did not.
Now, I just want to make sure we're clear. You don't know it. You don't have any personal knowledge about any house repairs of General Paxton, do you?
I do not.
You don't have any personal knowledge about a job for Laura Olson, do you?
I do not.
You don't have any personal knowledge about whether Nate Paul donated $25,000 2 years before all these events that we're talking about, right?
I think I do know that, but I'm not.
Thing about campaign donations, if anybody wants to see who is giving money to what candidate, all they have to do is get on the Texas Ethics Commission's website and can figure that out pretty quick, right?
And I think I did that, yes.
And it's not secret, is it?
No.
Okay. You don't know anything about late night legal advice, at least, or legal guidance. You didn't have a role in that, did you not?
Well, I certainly didn't at the time, no.
Okay. I'm just talking about what you knew.
Yeah.
You didn't know anything about whether there was any foreclosure stopped, right?
Not at the time, no.
You don't know anything about some secret meeting in an alleyway in the dark of night between Nate Paul and young Drew Wicker, right?
No, I don't.
That sounds ridiculous, does it not?
Not necessarily.
Did you know this guy Maxwell, this Texas Ranger, this guy that's in the Ranger Hall of Fame, you know who I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Did you know that he told these people when he was interviewed that there had been a secret meeting in an alleyway in the dark of night where a folder was handed over from Drew Wicker to Nate Paul? Did you know he had said that?
No,
Objection. Cross-examination by what someone else might have said is not proper.
Sustained.
He said he heard that from 5 or 6 people. Did you tell him that?
I did not tell him
Okay.
that, no.
And you didn't have any role whatsoever in the retention of outside counsel at the AG's office, did you? I'm talking about specifically Mr. Kamek.
Oh, that retention of outside counsel? No.
Okay. So that just kind of forecloses. Sounds like what you were involved in was the Mitty Foundation intervention as it relates to this proceeding. True?
I think that's largely yes.
Yeah, so when we talk about personal knowledge, and you know what 602 personal knowledge is under the rules, do you not?
Reasonably well.
Yeah, you're not supposed to testify about things unless you have personal knowledge. That's rule 602 of the rules of evidence, right?
I'll take you at your word. It's 602. I don't remember the number, but yeah.
I had a federal judge that made me learn the numbers, so they're burned in my brain. So let's talk about what you actually have personal knowledge of. You know, Mr. DeGuerin has been telling us, using the words ordered, demanded. Remember him using those words?
I'm not sure, but he may have.
I mean, we know General Paxton, we call him General Paxton, but he's not in the military, is he?
No.
Okay, he doesn't go around barking orders, does he?
I would not say he barks orders.
Yeah, this guy, if anybody's ever dealt with him knows that he's pretty low-key, pretty laid back, right?
That's a hard description for me to use.
But he's not some right-wing, crazy authoritarian walking around in lockstep, is he?
Well, that's a hard way to say it. You know,
To
some
give you an
people
easier way to say it.
Yeah.
He's not the kind of guy that screams at people and tells them, you go do this, you go do that. He doesn't do that.
Well, I can't answer yes to that because I have heard him do that before.
Okay. Now let's focus. Eric, could you put up Article 1? Since you're here to talk about the Mitty Foundation intervention, it's titled Protection of Charitable Organizations, right?
I'm reading it, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you've read this before, have you not?
I have read this before,
Sure.
yes.
And you knew you were here to testify and that most of your testimony would probably relate to this article, right?
Well, the Mitty Foundation, yes.
Sure. The very first sentence, protection, or I guess you should say the second sentence, protection of charitable organization there, that's not even correct, is it? Because that's not what the role of the Attorney General's office is it?
Well, we're tasked with protecting the public interest in charity.
Protecting the public interest in charity, isn't that right?
That's right.
Not protecting charities, right?
There's some overlap there.
Some overlap, but that's not what the AG's role is it?
No, that's right. I mean, we are not obligated to protect charitable trusts generally as, you know, if they are protecting themselves, for instance.
Now, we'll come back to that, but let's look at, I know you were several levels up the chain of command over Joshua Godbee, but it was Godbee who was in charge of the charitable trust area, true?
There was a division at that time called Financial Litigation and Charitable Trusts, and that was under Josh Godbee.
Okay, and you, of course, are familiar with the role of the AG's office in charitable trusts.
I am generally familiar with that role, yes.
You told me it's highly unusual, I think you told Mr. DeGuerin, it's highly unusual for the AG's office to get involved with charitable trusts, right?
It's highly unusual. I don't think I used that term. I think I used the term that it was something that we did, but it was not, it was not a huge volume of work that we did, but that we did intervene in some number of cases every year.
Okay, then because it sounded like, and I thought it sounded to me like you were making the case that this was incredibly unusual for the AG's office to get involved in any litigation involving charities. That's not true at all, is it?
No.
Okay.
No, the AG's office from time to time would be involved in litigation involving a charity.
Because the AG's office gets complaints every year about charities, does it not?
Well, it gets complaints, and it also gets notified of lawsuits.
Sir, I'm on a time clock, and if you could just answer my question, I'd really appreciate it. Can you do that for me? Just answer it, okay? Is it true that the AG's office gets many complaints every year about charities?
I'm having trouble answering that.
I'll help you. Eric, pull up 429, AG 429. Somebody prepared a PowerPoint about the AG's role with regard to charities. Do you see the first page?
Yeah, I was involved in preparing this.
Right. It says, protect the public interest in charity. See that?
I do.
Now, turn the next page, Eric. One of the questions Mr. DeGuerin asked you was how many charities or foundations there were in Texas. Remember that?
Yes.
Now we know what the numbers are, don't we? First bullet point.
Yes.
It's right there in black and white. As of December 2019,
Yes.
over 102,000 charities and about 7,500 private foundations, right?
That's what it says, yes.
Okay. It even provides the gross assets. See that?
Yes.
Next page, Eric. Eric, is this straight? There we go. And if we wondered, if the jurors wondered how active the AG's office was, in fact, how active it was with regard to charities, it's right there in black and white, right? These are the number of complaints received in fiscal year 18, 19, and 2020, right?
Yes.
So now we know.
As I see it here, yes.
Yeah, now we know, right? Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, now we know how many, yes.
Okay. So let's go. And you know, of course, that the Mitty Foundation had a sordid history. True?
I know that they had, we had been involved with an investigation of some nature of the Mitty Foundation, I believe, in the late double O's.
Yeah, I mean, let's all be clear. Not only had the AG's office been involved with the Mitty Foundation, the AG's office had, in fact, sued the Mitty Foundation. Isn't that right?
I'll take your word for it, but I don't.
You don't need to take my word. Exhibit 223, Eric. You know what an original petition is?
Yes.
That's a lawsuit, right?
It is.
That's a lawsuit where Greg Abbott was the Attorney General, right?
It appears to be, yes.
And Greg Abbott sued the Mitty Foundation. Do you see that?
I do.
And have you ever looked at this lawsuit before and all of the allegations made by the AG's office against the Mitty Foundation?
I cannot recall whether I looked at the specific petition or not.
Page 4, Eric. In case any of our jurors wanted to see the long and sordid history of the Mitty Foundation, it's right there in black and white, prepared by the Office of the Attorney General. See that?
Well, I see the allegations here, yes.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't think that the AG's office would just make allegations with no proof, would you?
Well, I'm not suggesting that. I had no personal involvement in this. I have no personal knowledge.
Right. And you know, of course, that this lawsuit that Greg Abbott's office filed when he was the AG led to a settlement and a consent decree?
I believe all I know about it, if you want to know, is that I believe one or more officers or board members of the Mitty Foundation were removed for some sort of violations.
Now, let's move forward in time to June of 2020. Eric, bring up AG 42. What's supposed to happen is that when a charity is involved in litigation, a notice is supposed to be sent to the AG's office so it can do its job. Is that right?
So that it can assess whether it should become involved.
Whether it's within the public's interest to intervene or get involved, right?
I don't know if there is a more specific analysis, but that would certainly be a consideration, yes.
One thing you know is that on at least 2 occasions, the Mitty Foundation failed to send timely notice to the Office of Attorney General. You know that, don't you?
I don't.
You don't even know that?
No, I don't.
Okay. What we have here, AG Exhibit 42, is a notice letter sent from some of Nate Paul's entities regarding some what they claim to be changes in the litigation. You see that?
Is it possible to blow it up just a little bit?
Eric, bring up the body of the letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, if you could re-ask.
The point is, notice was sent by Nate Paul's organizations informing the AG's office of the litigation and also that at least from their point of view, there'd been some sort of change in the circumstance.
Okay, I didn't see the letter, but I assume this letter is from Nate Paul's organization.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
I see that.
All right. And you know, of course, that the AG's office was provided with a very lengthy memo laying out not only the past problems with Mitty Foundation, but also current problems with the Mitty Foundation. True?
I did see that memo, yes.
This was a very lengthy and detailed memo, was it not?
It was a lengthy and detailed memo.
And if our jurors want to see what the justification was for the AG deciding to intervene into this Mitty Foundation litigation, they could look at AG 33. Would you put it on the screen? You've seen this memo before, have you not?
Did you want me to answer? Was there a question before this, or do you?
No,
want me
this
to-
is the question. You've
Okay.
seen this memo before, have you not?
I have seen this memo before, yes.
This memo is, it goes on and on, page after page, does it not?
I don't know how many pages. It looks like there's 6 pages.
Well, it's got a lot of attachments too. Look over here. Sir.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Right.
All right. And this is something that you looked at before you signed off on intervention in the Mitty Foundation case, right?
Likely.
Okay. And let's get to that. Eric, bring up AG Exhibit 151. You had told us about this bureaucratic procedure where this person signs and then it goes to the next person and then the next person up the chain of command, right?
Well, I wouldn't characterize it that way, but there is a procedure by which several people approve an intervention into a charitable lawsuit.
And that's what we're looking at here, true?
That is correct. Related to the Mitty Foundation, yes.
Right. And we can see that Mary Henderson signed off.
Yes.
And that was the same Mary Henderson that previously had been part of a memo saying that we maybe shouldn't get involved 6 months prior?
Yes.
Okay. And then we see that one of your subordinates, Joshua Godby, signed off, right?
That is correct.
And then we see that you signed off, right?
Indeed. Yes, I did.
And then we see that your boss signed off, right?
Mr. Mateer, yes.
And each of you signed off on an official government document because you felt at the time that it was in the best interest to do so. Isn't that right?
Based on what I have been told at the time, I believe that there was a colorable reason to intervene, yes.
Let's make sure we understand what you just said to us all. You said colorable reason?
Yes.
That's lawyer words, right?
Well, I don't know. I think everybody understands that.
You felt like, just you, let's just focus on you because I've asked some of these other folks.
Yes.
You felt like intervention was justified based on what you knew. Isn't that right?
Based on my conversations with the Attorney General, I believed that it was important for us to intervene in the Mitty Foundation litigation and that he had colorable reasons to do so that I had no reason to question at the time.
You make sure I get it so we can be clear. If you didn't think it was justified, you wouldn't have done it, right?
If I had believed at this time that the office would be acting against the Mitty Foundation, I would never have signed off on the intervention.
Mr. McCarty, I don't mean to be short with you, but I only have a short amount of time. And I know you like to speak in paragraphs, but could you just answer my question directly? You believed at the time it was justified. That's why you signed off, right?
No.
You believe that the information you had justified you signing off at that point in time, right?
I would not have made that decision on my own.
Okay. And we see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different people that made that decision, don't we?
There were 4 people who signed off on this.
How long did it take you to decide to sign off? Can you tell us?
It's hard for me to say how long it took for me to sign off. In other words, from the time I first learned of this until I ultimately signed off, I don't remember how long.
Let's
that
look.
was.
Exhibit 305, Eric. You see on here that on June 6th at 4:52, see that email that you were sent from Josh Godbee?
Yes.
And do you see at the top where you had signed off by 5:26?
Well,
38 minutes.
The difference between receiving the document and making the decision to sign off, it doesn't mean that I mean, clearly there were conversations prior to receiving it.
Not only did you sign off on the MIDI intervention, you also signed off on a memo authorizing an investigation of the MIDI Foundation, didn't you?
That's correct.
Let's look at that, Eric. AG Exhibit 155. And I think it's important, sir, as we're pulling that up, to think about what you were doing then versus what you decided to do once you lawyered up, okay? That's why I'm looking at this stuff back in time.
I'm sorry, if that's a question, I have a response, but it may not be a question.
Okay. AG 155, this is where you, along with four other individuals, approved an investigation of the MIDI Foundation. Isn't that right?
Yes, we approve this.
Okay. Now, let's focus on Nate Paul a little bit. Nate Paul was a major pain in the rear end, was he not? Take the document down so our witness is not distracted.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to, I'm sorry, could you repeat your question quickly?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Nate Paul was a major pain in the rear end, wasn't he?
I don't know that I would describe him that way.
Did you ever meet him?
I have met him, yes.
Was he aggressive?
I think he was somewhat aggressive at the time.
Condescending sometimes?
I think that's a fair characterization.
Demanding?
Well, clearly demanding.
Yeah. We look at AG 219. He began to accuse the AG's office literally within 30 to 40 days of wrongdoing with regard to the MIDI Foundation, didn't he?
Yes, I think that's a fair characterization.
I mean, he claimed that the AG's office had a conflict of interest, right?
Josh Godbee, I believe.
He claimed that the AG's office wasn't doing its job, right?
In so many words.
He claimed that the AG's office was biased in favor of the MIDI Foundation, right?
I don't recall, but he could have.
Let's look, Eric. Go to the fourth page. Pull it up, Eric. Fourth page, second paragraph from the top. Just so we're clear. I mean, this is within 35, 40 days of the intervention, and he is saying that Josh Godbee is grossly negligent, and also that has a lack of openness and clear bias. Do you see that language? It's the last sentence, second paragraph.
Yes, I see that.
So this Nate Paul, who supposedly was given the keys to the AG's office, is accusing the AG's office of being biased, grossly negligent, right?
Yes, he is.
He also was raising this issue that there was somebody who was married to the receiver in the MIDI Foundation who worked at the AG's office, right?
There was some sort of familiar relationship that he was upset about. I don't remember the specifics.
He was very upset that no one had ever told him that an individual who worked in the AG's office was married to the receiver in the case, right? Did I get that right?
That sounds familiar. I don't remember the details, but that sounds familiar.
Did anybody ever disclose that to him? That, you know what, just FYI, we're intervening, we're not taking sides, but we do have somebody who's working in our office for one of the parties in the case, or married to somebody working for one of the parties in the case.
The receiver?
Yes, sir.
Well, that wouldn't have been one of the parties, but to your question about whether Nate Paul was informed of that relationship, I'm not aware that he was.
By the AG's office?
Yeah, I'm not aware that he was.
And he sent email after email after email to Josh Godbee that you saw, where he made allegation after allegation after allegation against the AG's office. Isn't that right?
He made allegations and he made demands, and he, sort of demeaned our professionalism.
He was just aggressive and mean-spirited and accusing you guys of all kinds of things, wasn't he?
He was certainly aggressive. I don't know about mean-spirited, but he certainly made accusations too.
I mean, when somebody calls you grossly negligent and clearly biased, that's not very nice, is it?
Well, I'm a lawyer, so I'm used to that.
That happens to you a lot?
Well, not to me personally.
Okay. Let's look, just so we can close this loop. Eric, 165, please. He claimed, or his lawyer claimed, directly to you that the Office of the Attorney General had a a significant conflict of interest.
Can I see where you're looking?
Yeah. Eric, bring up the first and second paragraphs of Michael Wynn's letter or email to Darren McCarty in September 2020. He's accusing the AG's office of a conflict of interest, isn't he?
He is, yes. Yeah, I mean, yes.
He's
not
saying,
accusing us, he's stating it, yes.
He's saying that the OAG's office employs an individual who's married to the receiver, right?
I see that.
Yeah. And he's raising all kinds of Cain about that too, isn't he?
Well, he's certainly stating it, yes.
Did you know he ultimately threatened a lawsuit against the office for this very reason?
I remember that we received a communication, I believe, after I had reported to the FBI that was putting us on notice of claims against the office, as I recall.
You were telling us that you had conversations with Sheena Paul.
I did.
Sheena Paul was Nate Paul's sister.
And lawyer.
And also his lawyer.
That's correct.
But you also had conversations with the lawyers from Mitty Foundation too, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, so when you suggest, you weren't trying to suggest, I'm sure, that you were only talking to Nate Paul's lawyers. You were talking to the lawyers for the Mitty Foundation too, weren't you?
I was.
Okay. You never were told by Ken Paxton, take a side, were you?
I was told by Ken Paxton to expedite the termination of the litigation if possible.
Listen to my question so we can all go home. You were never told by Ken Paxton, pick a side or pick Nate Paul's side, were you?
He never used those words with me.
And do you remember when the news broke or the news was about to break in the Texas Tribune, being in a meeting and you were getting a call from the Tribune the Tribune reporter, and they wanted you to make a comment about the Mitty Foundation intervention?
I believe that I received an email.
Yeah, you received an email, and the allegation against you was that you had threatened the Mitty Foundation?
I do recall that, yes.
They claimed that you had told them there will be trouble if the Mitty Foundation didn't settle, right?
Yes.
That's what they were going to say in the newspaper, right?
Yes.
And you knew that was absolutely false, didn't you?
I believe that to be false. Yes.
I mean, the newspaper was getting ready to report that you, Darren McCarty, had been making threats against the Mitty Foundation on behalf of Nate Paul, right?
No.
You had been making threats against the Mitty Foundation if they didn't settle the case.
I believe that was what they intended to report, something of that nature.
Totally false, isn't it?
I never threatened the Mitty Foundation.
That was totally false, right?
That I made a threat?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was false.
But they were going to run with that if you didn't respond. They told you that, didn't they?
They did.
But let's make sure we're clear about this. If you didn't respond, the Texas Tribune was going to write a story where they claimed that you threatened the Mitty Foundation with trouble if they did not settle the case. That's what they were going to report, weren't they?
Well, that's what they were telling me at the time, as I recall. I know there's an email that has the words in black and white, but it was something of that nature.
And they kept after you for you to comment, didn't they?
Well, I don't think they kept after me. I think they just sent it once.
Yeah, but that's upset you pretty good, didn't it?
Yes, it bothered me.
Yeah, you were animated about that, weren't you?
I was bothered without question.
And you wanted to make it clear that you never said that. Never said that, right?
That I never threatened the Mitty Foundation.
Because you never did you?
I did not threaten the Mitty Foundation.
Let me ask you finally, were you, let's look at AG 1020, the last bullet point. Just want to know, we've been trying to figure out who was all involved in this. Bring that up, that last bullet point. AG 1020, were you part of the group after y'all went to the FBI that were also planning on cooking up bar complaints against your boss, Ken Paxton? Were you part of that group?
I don't have any recollection of that.
That would be really wrong to be cooking things up because you felt like you had been somehow mistreated, right?
I never considered retaliating against Ken Paxton.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. Cooking something up, that sounds like we're just going to make this foolishness up so we can try to protect ourselves, right?
I was not a participant in that conversation, have no idea of the context.
You would never.
I have no personal knowledge.
You would never even say that, would you? You would never say, let's cook up an FBI complaint, let's cook up a bar complaint, let's cook up a lot of foolishness because I think we're about to be fired. You'd never do that, would you? Would you do that?
Would I make a false complaint? No.
Okay. Your Honor, thank you very much. Pass the witness.
Redirect, Mr. DeGarrett.